It's now time for us to say a very good morning to a good friend, as well as somebody who is actively involved in fighting for the rights of freedom of religion. It's Michael Swain. He is the Executive Director at 4SA. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Jonathan, and good morning to your listeners. Great to be with Breakfast with Friends.
Good to have you. Thank you for your time. So the Department of Health has published for comment a series of draft regulations issued under the National Health Act. These draft health regulations will give government the same sweeping powers to control every aspect of life and society that they have exercised during the state of national disaster. This truly came as a horrific surprise to me, but at the same time, one could maybe say, well, it's not that bad. But the real question, Michael, is what is the motivation for government to introduce these amended draft regulations at this specific time?
Well, the supposed intention of these regulations, Jonathan, is to supersede and to take over the same type of rule by an elite, unaccountable executive that we've experienced for the past 2 years under this state of national disaster. And I think it's probably worthwhile pausing and considering the very fragile state of our democracy. In January this year, you might recall, Parliament burned to the ground. Now, in any other context, if you think of this in the context of, say, the UK, if the Houses of Parliament had burned down, or Washington, if Capitol Hill had been destroyed, it would never be out of the news cycle. But a month later, when the president made his SONA address, it wasn't even mentioned. And there are no plans currently to rebuild. So I think we need to be very concerned about our democracy, and that is why it's so important that we be engaged in this matter, because this current regulations represents a massive overreach by government, because these regulations will be permanent and they will continue indefinitely. And that means that they can basically do what they want. And I think they're doing it, of course, under the pretext of we've got to keep everybody safe from COVID-19. But as we know, and as we can see, and it's no secret, the Omicron variant, combined with, of course, vaccines and their rollout, but this has resulted in 80 to 85% of our entire population developing protection against severe disease and death from this virus. So there's absolutely no need for government to extend these powers via regulation on this pretext of saving lives.
No, I fully agree with you. And I mean, it's amazing that other countries, they've gone back to basically normal, first world countries saying no need to wear masks and things like that. So it's really interesting to see this decision. But question number 2, how do these regulations actually work in practice? And why should we be so concerned?
Well, it's important to understand that this is not a bill. A bill is like a piece of legislation in its sort of fledgling form, which is typically written up first by a department to introduce new legislations or to amend an existing act of parliament sometimes. This normally starts off in a department, and then it will go to a committee, then it will go to the National House of Assembly, then the National Council of Provinces. In other words, there's plenty of opportunity to input. But these are regulations. So we only have literally not even a month now. We have until the 15th of April to make comments on this. And they're issued under an existing act, under the National Health Act. And this is why there is no requirement for parliamentary oversight on these powers to regulate what has already been delegated to the Minister of Health. That these regulations are simply formed, and they are exactly the same power of law as an act, but they're issued by the Minister of Health. And they've been now promulgated by the minister, and they don't require parliamentary oversight, as I said, nor does he have to give, by the way, any reasons for his decisions or any future decisions that are made. He can literally chop and change when he likes, whatever he likes. Government can do anything it wants, whenever it wants, and there are no checks and balances. And all he has to do is to list a disease as a notifiable medical condition, an NMC, a notifiable medical condition, and these powers become immediately activated. So we absolutely need to engage and to comment on these things and to push back against them while we have the opportunity. It's actually an amazing thing, to be honest, that we have this opportunity to comment, because it isn't actually required, but we need to be very sure that government hears the voice of concerns and objections that we have very clearly.
Definitely need to. And for those who are saying, well, yeah, it's not that bad. I mean, if it's a notifiable medical condition, surely, then it warrants some attention. But there are definitely far broader concerns about these draft regulations. What are some of those that stand out for you and the rest of the team at 4SA?
Well, everything's in the definition in law. And the question is, what is a notifiable medical condition? Because the Minister of Health can actually define any disease as a notifiable medical condition without any consultation with the public or Parliament, or to give any reasons for such a listing. And the only thing that he has to consider is the risk of transmission. In other words, I would agree with you 100%. If we have something suddenly coming along of the severity of, say, smallpox or Ebola or something like that, then good and well. But he doesn't have to consider the severity of the disease. Something as inconsequential as a common cold could theoretically be listed as an NMC and then drastically and unreasonably limit constitutional rights. So we're talking about the same type of limitations we had under lockdown level 5 with curfews, and you can't buy chicken or you can't go to the shops to buy alcohol or cigarettes. I mean, not that I would want to do that, but you understand what I'm saying? The minute control that will be placed over our lives. And they literally impose the same degree of limitation irrespective of the severity of the disease. And it can last indefinitely as long as the disease is listed as one of these notifiable medical conditions. And there's also no criteria or process for a disease to be declared as an endemic, let alone a pandemic, in these draft regulations.
That is really, really scary. Now, of course, this whole draft health regulations that are being put forward and that we need to comment on could also directly have limitations on our freedom and freedoms as religious people. And would love for you to just kind of speak into that. What are some of those main limitations on our freedoms and religious rights that we should take note of?
Well, definitely the main one is in Regulation 16J4. This requires proof of vaccination if you want to attend any gathering over 1,000 people indoors or 2,000 outdoors. And so it particularly and unfairly discriminates against religious organizations with larger venues and congregations. And, we have the right to practice our religion. Sections 15 guarantees our freedom of belief, conscience, thought, and opinion, and religion. And Section 31 says that we can assemble and associate together. But this tells us no, we cannot unless we are vaccinated. I mean, imagine you as a pastor will have to literally, if you've got a larger church, you're going to have to stand outside the door. You're going to have to say to everybody who comes, not why do you want to come to church? Do you need healing? Do you need prayer? Do you need deliverance? Do you need a blessing? No, you have to say to them, do you have a vaccination certificate? And if you don't, then, well, go away. Come back when you've got one. I mean, what kind of a gospel is that? I mean, it is unbelievable that there should be literally health discrimination, almost like a health apartheid, in order to allow you to get into a church gathering. And then, of course, Regulation 15A and B, this imposes mandatory medical examination, hospitalization, quarantine, isolation, and treatment merely for having been exposed to somebody with one of these notifiable medical conditions, or even being suspected of having contracted it. And there's no definition of treatment. And these draft regulations could literally be used to impose mandatory vaccinations. They could literally vaccinate you on the spot, or even compulsorily quarantine you in a state facility. And by the way, the final kicker is that already passed under these regulations are excessively harsh criminal sanctions, which include an unspecified or unlimited fine or up to 10 years in jail. So we need to understand this is not light, small stuff. This is something that we absolutely have to object to protest to, get hold of your friends, persuade them, put it on your Facebook pages or your WhatsApp groups. We need the message to go out far and wide, and we need people to respond. We haven't got much time.
We definitely don't. If you've just joined the conversation, maybe you've just tuned in to CCFM, we are chatting to the Executive Director for Freedom of Religion South Africa. His name is Michael Swain, and we're talking about something that is very, very important for every South African citizen. It's the proposed draft health regulations, and there's a limited time for us to comment. On that note, Michael, just run us through what can we do to object to these draft regulations, and how much time do we actually have?
Well, the answer to how much time do we have is very little, and that's why this is such an urgent matter. They have only given until Friday, the 15th of April, and that's literally in, I think, what's that, 15 days' time, 16 days' time?
16 days, yeah.
So what we've done is we 4SA, we've made it as easy as possible for both organizations, churches, etc., and individuals to make individual submissions to the Department of Health. Remember, you have to make a submission. Don't bother to get 1,000 signatures on a petition. That counts as one submission. Every submission counts. So the more submissions we send in, the louder our voices become. And we also have teamed up again with a wonderful online platform, neutral platform called Dear SA. And people can use this online platform to make their submission literally with a few clicks. And I've given you the link, Jonathan. Perhaps you could post that, or you can get that on the 4SA website as well. If you go onto the 4SA website, on our homepage, there's an image there that you can click, which will take you straight to that. We've also, by the way, produced a 5-minute video to highlight these main concerns that can be viewed or sent around and shared or what have you. And this also has in the comment section a click-through link to this Dear SA platform. And the other thing we've got is on our website, we've also got, and I've given you the link, for organizations who might want to make a written submission. They can download a template that we've produced that's available. And I've given you the link to that as well. And we're going to be doing a written one as well, for a text one for individuals. Some individuals don't like using the online platform. But today we're going to be putting up on our website a click to download an individual text submission that you can modify and amend and send it direct to yourself. So that's what we need to do, as many as possible and without delay.
Definitely. We have to. And for those listening to this interview, if you would like us to forward you the WhatsApp with all those different links and so forth, you're welcome just to send us a message and we will send you those details. But quick and easy, go to the 4SA website, which is www.forsa.org.za, and you'll see it right there on the homepage. Please, ladies and gentlemen, we have limited time to respond, to make our voices heard. The Friday, the 15th of April, is that deadline. So we need to act, and we need to act swiftly. Michael Swain, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your time, and thank you for just explaining everything for us so clearly and so concisely. All the best.
Thank you, Jonathan. God bless.